presentation is going to give you not only a deeper understanding of the issues that impact childcare and its profound effect on communities and economic development, but we also want to focus on some of the opportunities and the solutions available to you as individuals, as businesses, and as communities to strengthen the early care and learning ecosystem in Indiana. We have a lot to cover in our time together. So to ensure that we get the most out of today's presentations, we will ask that everyone stays muted throughout the presentations, but use that chat feature to pose questions. The track team will either interject those questions to our presenters right at that moment, or be sure that they get addressed during the Q&A periods. Do feel free to come off mute to ask questions during question and answer periods. And then using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen would probably be really helpful at those times as well. So as you can see on our screen, we have two parts to today's presentations. First, TPMA will share the results of their work for track over the past few months. And that will be followed by our early childhood education systems consultant, Jennifer Lee, giving us some very timely data and funding impacts around CCDF, which we know is hitting really hard right now. All right, TPMA, you're up first. We'll give you control of the screen and have you introduce your team. We'll follow that with a question and answer session. Then we'll hand things over to Jennifer for her part of the presentation. And then at that point, we'll open it up to a final time of questions and discussions before we wrap things up for today. So we're glad you're here, and TPMA, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Let me just get things going here. Okay, are y'all able to see the presentation at full screen? Oh. Ooh. Okay. Are y'all seeing that full screen? Can you give me a nod or a no? Okay, there we go. Took a second, but we're there. All right, so we are TPMA. We're a national consulting firm based in Indianapolis. And actually, my family, most of my extended family is from East Central Indiana. So very familiar with the general area. And you know, we were contracted with TRAC to do a child care study and action plan that includes, you know, what capacity and demand for childcare, economic impact, all of that. My name is Brianna Dines. I'm the project lead and senior consultant with TPMA, and I'll let my team members introduce themselves. Alex?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexander Taylor. I have the privilege of knowing many of you on the call, which is very exciting. I'm glad to reconnect after, during, whenever. Very privileged to be here. I am a research consultant at TPMA and have been with the firm for about 2 years conducting data analysis. Very privileged to be here and share about our project to address childcare in East Central Indiana. And I'll go to Bill.
All right, thanks Alex and Bree. Bill Frakowiak here from the same team as Bree and Alex, a research consultant with TPMA. I've been with the firm for about a year, and I'm also honored and privileged to be here. So looking forward to some good presentation and discussion.
All right, thanks, y'all. Okay, we are going to dive right in. Bill's going to start us off kind of contextualizing the study a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bree. So we'll start with this slide here, just with the current constraints and potential gains. And this is kind of like a roadmap or a framework, if you will, for the things that we're going to be discussing a little bit more. So the cost of childcare is something that we've seen continue to rise. Over the past 10 years, the daily cost of care on average in the state of Indiana has gone up about $14.66. This equates to a cost of about 10.84% for married partner median income annually and 33.45% of median single female householders in the state of Indiana annually. Secondly, we see that childcare capacity must rise to meet the demand beyond the current gap, and that's forward with projections of population growth among young children in the area. And finally, we'll link this to the cost and capacity constraints, how they affect the labor force. So we've estimated over 2,000 work-willing parents that reside in the East Central Indiana region, and those are assumed to be working full-time if they could, and the economic benefit of those parents returning to work would be substantial. Next slide, please.
Mhm.
So as we go through this, we'll address these issues in a few ways. We'll begin with the capacity analysis that includes cost. We'll move on to the work willing and economic impact, and then we'll discuss some promising solutions to these issues as well. Next slide. Okay, so we'll begin here. What we have is this table is the average cost of care across licensed centers, licensed homes, and ministries. This data is informed by market rate studies from 2016, 2018, and 2022. You see this is comparing the Indiana state costs to the East Central Indiana costs for daily, weekly, and annual rates. In addition to the market rate studies, the 2025 data comes from Brighter Futures Indiana Data Center. And for those years in between, we assume that linear change for the gap years. We calculate that by finding the difference between a couple years and then dividing by the total number of years to fill in those years where the market rate studies were not present. So as stated, this table shows the daily, weekly, and annual costs for the
sorry.
state of Indiana and the East Central Indiana region. This is here where we see that $14.66 increase along the top line there for the state of Indiana. Along the same timeline, the East Central Indiana daily average rate increased by $10.24. So while the East Central Indiana region by this measure is technically more affordable than the state of Indiana average, when we look at the median household incomes of Indiana compared to the ECI region, on the next slide, please. We see the same relationship between the median income in the East Central Indiana region that we do in the child care costs. The ECI region compared to the state of Indiana, slightly lower median income. So while the costs are less, the annual median incomes are also less for married partner present, male householders, and female householders with no partner present. Next slide, please. To focus in on the East Central Indiana region specifically, we examine the portion of the median income per type of householder that child care consumes. This assumes that there are 2 children in the family that need full-time care. We see the highest burden of the cost of child care falls on the shoulders of the female householders with no partner present. That's about 33.45%, highlighted on the first slide. This is actually up from 29.9% in 2016. The burden decreases to the male householder with no partner. That drops to about 24.42%. And then finally, its lowest threshold is estimated at the married and partner present households, which the cost is approximately 10.84, or about 11% of their annual median income. Next slide, please. Now we shift our focus away from the issue of cost. We turn to the other fundamental issue in this topic, which is that of capacity. This data comes from the Brighter Futures Indiana Data Center. This chart shows the breakdown of seats for childcare slots in the East Central Indiana region by county. You'll notice that not all counties have all types of childcare providers, and some counties have greater capacity than others. Specifically, notice that the estimated number of children in the East Central Indiana region is estimated at 21,355 from Lightcast. That would be more than twice the number of seats available. You see in the very right column, all the way at the bottom, the 9,023 is calculated to be the total number of seats among the counties for all the programs listed. So that disparity is by about a factor of 2. Next slide, please. So while the previous slide is a cross-section of a moment in time, we must consider that the only constant thing is change. So there is projected to be a slightly, but growing cumulative number of children under 5 in the East Central Indiana region. It's noted too in this table here that there is a cumulative total increase in the number of children under 5 in the region. Some counties go up, some counties go down, but overall, the region is looking at a slight increase in the number of children under 5, which slightly aggravates that issue from the previous slide a little bit further of there being a surplus of demand for available seats. So this brings us to the graphic, the graphical way to kind of envision this problem. So what we have here is a projection from 2024 to 2034. You'll see the population of children under 5. This is a projection from Lightcast. That is the blue bar. The demand is our estimation that some portion of the population of these children will not need care. Approximately 10% is what we estimate that will either receive care from grandparents, from another family member, or the other parent is working opposite shifts and they're able to cover some portion at least, or all of the child care. So that takes the population that we've been looking at and it decreases it by about 10%. Makes that goal a little bit more manageable. The dotted line indicates the current capacity. That's at approximately 9,000 seats that we identified earlier. The red, green, and purple lines, they represent annual increases by 6, 8, and 10% respectively in terms of the number of seats. So by these projections, then the East Central Indiana region must increase capacity by just over 8% per year on average to meet this demand by 2034. One possible mitigating factor is that projected number of children under 5 is not a very large proportion, but it is an estimated increase, and it will require an extra bit of childcare capacity growth to attain. Next slide. This table kind of breaks out what we just saw in the graph. The top table, that is the total number of seats by 6, 8, and 10% increases per year. The bottom table here illustrates the same 6, 8, and 10% increases just in new numbers of seats. So you can think of the top table as the total number of seats that would need to be seen in the region, and then the bottom table is the annual number of raw increases. And with that concludes the cost and capacity portion. I'll hand this over to Alex to dive into work willing.
Alrighty, thank you, Bill. So for this portion of the data analysis review, we will be discussing the work willing analysis. We're going to do a very large macro approach, so I invite all of you to please review the full report if you're interested. There's a lot of information in there that we just unfortunately don't have the time to cover, so we will just keep it moving, keep it fresh. So the graphic on the left-hand side of the screen shows the step-by-step process that our team conducts for this analysis. In total, there are 5 steps. What's important too is we define a work-willing parent as an individual who meets the following 3 criteria. 1, they are not in the workforce. 2, they are ready and able to return to the workforce. And 3, they cannot join the workforce because of childcare constraints, specifically that, right? Next slide, please. All right, so step 1 is to simply acquire the data for the number of children in each of the counties. Displayed within the chart on the left side, we have provided both 2024 and 2025 data to just provide a bit of perspective on the growing numbers. For the purpose of this analysis, our team utilized the 2024 number of children to begin our analysis, and that number was 21,355, including all of the regions as a cumulative whole. Next slide. Step 2 is to convert the number of children to the number of households. To do so, we utilize our baseline methodology, which was a 2019 national study developed by the Council of Economic Advisors. We utilize the breakdown on the left-hand side of the screen, that's the original methodology, to then translate our number of children into households. We begin with 21,355 children, and with this methodology, we're estimating that about 18,000 households exist that those children live within, okay? Next slide, please. This slide outlines our baseline work-willing methodology. So in 2019, the Council of Economic Advisors, we estimated that parents would re-enter the workforce at about 3.8 million people. okay? Congruently, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated the number of parents of children eligible to join the workforce at 27.9 million. We did a simple ratio to develop our base. Our base ratio is calculated utilizing these numbers and equals 13.6%. What you're going to see is on the chart on the right-hand side is that 2019 CEA ratio. That's that 13.6% that we're referring to. The chart on the side outlines this methodology for the 18,092 households. With this methodology, the team estimated that there are approximately 2461 work-willing parents. So with 2019 methodology, we're at about 24 work-willing parents in the region, okay? All right. Now, we know that some time has transpired since 2019. As a result, our team has updated our methodology. The number of work-willing parents is pegged to the employment population ratio. As a result, we have captured different point of time calculations to translate our methodology over time to be representative of like what's really happening in the data as well as the world around us. The chart on the bottom of the page outlines the change over time of this methodology. Currently, we are utilizing the 2023 resilience adjustment percentage of 12.20%, which estimates that there are approximately 2,207 work-willing parents. Next slide. To take this one step further, the team identified the number of work-willing parents for each of the counties represented to get an idea of where everyone's located at. Once again, utilizing this model of the 12.20%, the team allocated the work-willing parents of each county. The largest group was allocated to Delaware County at approximately 557 work-willing parents, whereas the lowest was allocated to Blackford County with an estimated of 65. Next slide, please. Now, all that to be said, we found how many there are. Now we go into and we forecast out our economic impact. So within the next sections, we will discuss economic impact of returning those 2,207 work-willing parents back into the economy. We do this by modeling the work-willing parents and then forecasting 3 different items: earnings, gross regional product, and then tax revenue. For these sections, we are viewing the economic impact holistically and regionally. The team has created one-pagers that break down the estimates of economic impact and work-willing number for each of the counties present. So we have 9 separate one-pagers, provide the ranges, all the fun stuff that we're going to kind of talk through in the next couple of slides. All right. So first, we model the work-willing parents utilizing 3 different models. This is very complicated stuff, so I'm going to be quick and then we can forget about it moving forward. The first is the MIR model. This assumes an equal distribution of work-willing parents of the current industry breakdown. The second is the downward adjusted model. This assumes that those work-willing parents are going to enter into the industries in more of an entry-level position, traditionally making less than $50,000 per year. We're trying to capture some risk in overestimating some of those wages, some of those GRP things, right? The last model, known as the occupation model, performs similarly to that of the MIR model. The big difference between the two was the data that we utilized. For MIR model, we utilized industry data, whereas for occupation, we utilized occupation data. Once again, all in all to say, I invite you to read the full report, really understand what we do here. These are very quick versions of this. Now, the graphic on the right displays the distribution of those work-willing parents, specifically their wages, okay? In short, the key finding is that what we're looking at here is a range of economic impact that we'll discuss more further later. What you're seeing on the left hand is the green and the right hand is the blue. We're ranging that is our happy spot of economic impact. Somewhere in there is probably the true answer to where all these work-willing parents are returning, but this is the range that we've provided. All right, this slide indicates the different outputs associated with each of the models. Within this chart, we are seeing ranges of 82.2 to 102.5 million in aggregate average pay. We're seeing 2.5 million to 3.1 million in state income tax. and 1.5 to 1.9 million in estimated local income tax. All right, this last slide provides the outputs of each of the models, including GRP and sales, import, and property taxes, as well as the associated totals. From this graphic, we are seeing economic impact from each of the models totaling between $273 million to $356 million. I want to preface that this is if we return all 2,207 of those work-willing parents back into the industry that they are working, with the models in hand. I also want to preface that even if we returned half of the 2,207, that we could estimate that half of this economic impact would be pushed back into the economy. Next, Bree will walk us through the discussion on promising solutions, and then I will come back to discuss the action plan.
All right, thank you so much, Alex. So I want to talk about some of the promising solutions, in East Central Indiana that are have already, proven successful, as well as the statewide, other things that we've seen. And then also some, out-of-state examples, Midwest, and then a national. So we've categorized these promising solutions into a few basic categories. So cooperative and community-based options, those are, they're smaller scale, but they can be scaled up. But they're, maybe more kind of people power accessible solutions. We've got home and micro provider support systems, so ways that networks can support smaller providers. Employer involvement is really going to be the biggest, most impactful piece of this puzzle. We've further categorized that into 3 tiers of engagement. And then collaborative development integration. This is, economic development projects, capital projects, new developments coming in that, have integrated childcare as a key aspect of that. Then we have education institution models, whether that be higher education or our public school systems, how those can do both, preparing the workforce of early childhood educators, but also providing students and staff with childcare as well, and how all of that relates. So the first category, cooperatives and community-based options. Co-ops are, collectively owned, often employee owned. So the teachers and the staff collectively own a cooperative. A small group, it can be multi-site. Some of the larger city examples, like in New York City and Philly, they've got multiple sites. But we also here in Indiana have a cooperative preschool network, and that serves about 500 families. So, that's an example here in the state of Indiana of at least that, that pre-K co-op model. Often they're, parents are, they might engage in some volunteering in the classroom or in terms of supporting admin, maybe once or twice a month. And if that's not possible, there's still kind of traditional seats for parents who aren't able to do that. And often they kind of exist in other community spaces. So maybe that's a congregation, like a church building, community center spaces, things like that. Others are foundation-led efforts. So, we, again, as kind of the, state funding is, not as available, foundations are being asked to step up a lot more on a number of levels, but, in childcare as well. And this is, we particularly seen community foundations in rural communities be really integral for this. Kosciuszko Community Foundation has supported in partnership with the local schools, some early childhood education, Women's Fund in Ashland County, Ohio, and other foundations stepping up. Other ones are, other kind of volunteer service-based collaborations. But those are those are less reliable, less scalable because they are service-based. So, all right. So home and micro provider support systems. The most robust and best practice in terms of this are these shared services alliances. Small center collaborate. They pool resources and administrative costs and services. There's usually a backbone hub that kind of functions as an HR might, and can just pool some of those resources so that each single small provider doesn't have to reinvent the wheel on their own in terms of that. Popularizer of this is Opportunities Exchange. And there are other, network training and quality support models. That includes Indiana Family Child Care Network and others that just kind of provide a networks that convenes providers, shares resources, professional development, things like that. So a really interesting one, this Mahoob Atwa one in Minnesota was childcare pods, which centers were still autonomous, but they shared a space. So they had their own rooms and stuff, but they could share, things like a playground and other things as well. So even just that physical, sharing some physical resources. Okay. So moving on to employer involvement. So we created kind of 3 tiers to make sense of this, knowing that employers might have different buy-in or willingness to engage on any one of these. So the kind of more entry level involvement is just kind of being flexible, having some benefits like flexible spending accounts, also flexible work schedules, so parents can deal with pick up and drop off and sick time and all of these things, and then also reserve seats. So partnering with a childcare center to kind of pay for a certain number of seats to make sure that their employees can have some care, because we know wait lists and just accessing seats, period, regardless of how much it is also a big piece of this. Cost sharing and larger investments. These are kind of your tri-share models that have become, another best practice. We see those in a variety of ways. That the traditional is kind of state funded and then employer and then employee. But again, we also see creative community-based solutions. We know that in the area, Sugar Creek Packing has Y-Care, that collaboration. Northeast Indiana's Childhood Coalition that combines a few different, it's kind of tri-share plus. So a few different partners, but including the employer, and also Thrive by 5 in Noble County includes the employer as well. While the parents, there's a third party, whether that's foundation or institution or state government or, other local government. And then, of course, the parent providing around a third. On-site care for employees and community, that's, kind of the biggest scale, most possibility of really impacting the overall capacity, really bringing seats, and also, being better able to ensure that childcare or childhood educators have a living wage too, that supports recruitment and retention of that workforce. Again, in the area of Toddler Town, a Pioneer, other across the state, Appleseed and Franciscan Health partnered to open a facility, and some other big ones like the really big ones like Toyota and things like that. But there's also some possibilities. There are also possibilities for multiple employers to come together to do to open a center as well in an area. All right, so development integration. So this could include, you know, housing developments, commercial developments, or mixed use, and you know, integrating that into, obviously, if the market says you need more housing, you probably are going to need more childcare on some level. If you're hoping to, you know, if you're bringing in a new business, that business has got to have people working for it. Some of them are probably going to need childcare. So it makes sense to start thinking about these things holistically, and importantly, you know, potentially economic development dollars can fill in some of the gaps here. Some examples of that are, you know, a Midwest example, you know, St. Louis, Washington University Medical had, you know, big development, and they incorporated expansion of their childcare into that. Family scholar houses, we know, are something that this region has some of. We know, you know, the Louisville and Sellersburg have that integrated childcare into those offerings too. All right. And lastly, educational institution models. So these are, whether they be public school systems, like, you know, local examples, Northeastern Blaine and Muncie, who've got pre-K or even, you know, that 3 to 5, Ivy Tech, community college, having, you know, they've got early childhood education programs, but also, you know, some offer staff and student childcare benefits. Kids on Campus initiative, early childhood development centers up in South Bend between Notre Dame and St. Mary's. They've been able to kind of have a pretty sustainable childcare offering there. All right, I'll kick it back to Alex.
All righty, thank you, Bree. The following slides present 15 strategies that are organized pretty thematically. We try to make it pretty easy for everyone. Each strategy has corresponding tactics that are found within the report to further analysis if you wish. We'll cover some of them, we'll not cover them all in full. But with that, let's go to the next one.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So, in short, the Child Care Action Plan is organized around these 3 goals. The first, sustain and building childcare capacity. I want to preface the sustain as the really important piece of this goal. We want to make sure that we're keeping the facilities we have, the programs we have. I know in the chat we're talking about losing programs, providers closing, all that fun stuff, but this is what our main focus in this plan is that the sustaining and then ultimately building of that capacity. Number 2, preparing the childcare workforce. We know that is a pivotal piece of this, and that has been a missing piece within the past. So we want to make sure that we're addressing that simultaneously with the ultimate goal of assisting parents and children. Most people are in childcare because they want to help people, they want to teach children, they want to do good, right? Do good things, quote unquote. So we want to make sure we're assisting the parents and children. That's kind of the preface of the problem. So ultimately, those are our three goals here. All right. Strategy 1 and strategy 2 are both designed to really assist with interconnectivity and to formalize a standing body to start acting on some of these strategies. In addition, these strategies are designed to assist in increasing awareness among various topics. We see some misalignment in understanding what the problem is and all of the stuff associated with childcare. So aligning those priorities, increasing awareness, making everyone on the same page is kind of what these 2 focus on. All right, strategy 3 and 4 focus on retaining and collecting key data, reports, and findings, and then providing technical expertise as a result of that data. We want to make sure our data is up to date. Even the data that we've presented today could be updated regularly, consistently, and constantly. It's one of our main focuses is to keep that updated, especially with capacity. We know that's really changing right now. So just keeping that as close as we can to as true information is probably the best. Strategy 3 focuses on that data collection. We're looking at capacity. We're looking at cost, quality of childcare, as well as longitudinal data. That's becoming more and more of a focus, is to see how children are developing over time through these programs, etc. Strategy 4 focuses on the provision and role of that technical assistance, specifically with grants, loans, childcare compliance. That's our licensing, our certification, all of that complicated stuff, right? So that's really what we're focusing on in these 2 strategies. Now, strategy 5 emphasizes the pivotal role of businesses. Now, Bree alluded to this. Business is pivotal to economic development. We see it, large business, small business. It's kind of how economic development works. This includes tactics focused on licensing, certification, zoning, construction, things like that. In addition, this includes our tax preparation, our fiscal processes, things that you have to consider when you're developing childcare solutions. Tactics 5.4 to 5.6 focus on the developing of a portfolio and developing your business network with an emphasis on information sharing among businesses so everyone is on the same page. Once again, let's build that awareness, build that alignment among industry leaders as well as childcare leaders. Lastly, tactics 5.7 to 5.12 encourage and incorporate large and small business representation and participation. When we think economic development, we traditionally think large business, large manufacturing, large food processing, etc. We're now incorporating small businesses, Main Street, new businesses, high growth, private firms, all of the above, right? So this is kind of looking holistically at that picture, developing that picture and implementing upon what kind of information we can gather. Now, this slide focuses on supporting the childcare workforce, and this includes a lot of strategies. So 6 to 11 focusing on workforce. Now, topics that fall within this group focus on building of qualified substitutes, the development of career pathways for teachers, the development of job mentoring, shadowing programs, things to get individuals involved in the childcare workforce. Strategy 9 focuses on in-depth professional development, focusing on our specific CPR, financial counseling, things like background checks, bonding, insurance, while strategy 10 focuses on connecting supply of workforce to demand through job boards, employment opportunities, hiring fairs, things of those natures, right? Lastly, strategy 11 focuses on the utilization and information sharing of the current childcare curriculum. Once again, we're trying to get alignment in what we're working with in the region. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page. All right, both strategy 12 and 13 are specifically ironed to parents, although all of these affect parents and children in some way. Strategy 12 targets quality childcare and how that is translated moving forward, where strategy 13 provides a few tactics on ways to personalize options for parents in the ever-changing landscape. We know a lot of changes are constantly occurring, so adaptability is a recommendation, right? We want to make sure that providers are adaptable as well as parents. We know that a lot of things are changing rapidly, so we want to make sure everyone's good to go. Now, strategy 14, as Bree alluded to earlier, focuses on employer participation. And this is a pivotal aspect of the most successful childcare models and coordination of shared services. As a result, this strategy focuses exclusively on the development of employer-based childcare solutions. We've provided a list of those solutions. We explore things like the development of a central resource hub, on-site and near-site childcare development, the exploration of overnight 24-hour care, backup care, things like that within this area. Finally, strategy 15 is to incentivize collaboration, developmentation, and implementation of shared solutions for childcare. So these 2 strategies focus, or these 2 tactics, we are focusing on real-time solutions on how to incentivize program participation and how to subsidize the cost of childcare. We have covered some different promising solutions, various models that are all outlined in further detail in the report that should be considered when designing a solution. The true answer is there is no perfect solution. There's a ton of different types of them that are going right now. TriShare seems to be the most popular, and that's what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen. That's the North Carolina version of the TriShare. However, we're seeing variations of that foundation-led TriShare programs. We're seeing independent companies owning childcare facilities, all various things. So all that to be said, this strategy really focuses on that final step of we're going with the model and this is what we got.
All right. So everybody take a deep breath. That was a lot. We know there are a lot of questions about the, kind of specific concrete details of this. Again, we'll, when the final report is shared, there's, over 100 pages for your reading pleasure. And we also, this discussion partly too is to also, potentially tweak any of that and just make sense of what's possible. So, we want to kind of discuss what should we do now? So first, to just kind of want to open it up to some reflection of kind of what stood out. Were there any surprises? And if the track folks can help monitor the chat and call on folks with hands up, that would be helpful. Anyone, have anything that they want to share about just what stood out, or what confirmation might have been presented.
All right, Jennifer, we'll start with you.
So the one thing that stood out to me is that we have 2,200 willing to work parents or caregivers. And my concern with that the number, I think the number's right. But my thought process is I see that number growing exponentially with the wait list, with the changes in the guidelines. Previously with CCDF, parents could be looking for work and qualify for that voucher. And now they have to be working or going to school. Do you have any thoughts on expected growth for that number? What do you see happening?
Yeah, I can jump into that. Thank you for asking that. I think that's the question of the hour, right? What are the repercussions of what's happening currently, right? That's kind of what we're gonna, the answer to that is we will find out. We update our methodology every year. So once the next set of data comes out, we will update it. My gut instinct is, because unemployment is at one of the highest it's been in a while, is that there are more work willing people as a result of that. Work willing does include those who are unemployed. It's anyone who is looking for work counts in that number. But that is what my gut instinct says, is that because unemployment rose, we're going to see more people who have to stay home to take care of children because of various reasons. It's all sorts of stuff at this point, but in short, that's my answer.
Yeah. Anything else that stood out or surprises? What about challenges? Which challenges that the action plan is kind of pushing us to address? Do you feel like are just the most urgent?
I think the change with CCDF and the vouchers being frozen and the number of providers in Indiana and Delaware County that we saw close just in the month of September. I think the last number I got from the state was a week and a half ago, and they had 45 providers in Indiana that closed in September. We have a very small group in the Promise neighborhood of 20 providers, and 2 of them closed in September. So I think that's a real concern, the number of providers that are closing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, that speaks to obviously, like, you know, the data shows that things need to increase by, you know, 2 times over. At the same time, we're seeing things go the opposite direction on the ground. And so that should alert all the elected officials here, alert anybody else that is involved in decision making, is that, you know, we are, you know, actively swimming against the current here. And so it's going to take employers stepping up. It's going to take very, you know, a serious increase in collaboration on everybody's part in communities to address this. Yeah, Lauren?
I think I was in a meeting this morning, and I think what is concerning me the most is we're all in the same boat as far as struggling. I know I talked to like 4 or 5 different non-for-profits that are really having a hard time with all of the cuts in, you know, healthcare, you know, from healthcare to everything else. So I think that's going to be hard. I think another one of my concerns is trying to keep it affordable. I know in order to pay, I mean, I was looking at the data, and in order to, you know, in order to survive and to pay high quality staff and give them a wage that they can actually live with, I don't know how we're going to do that and keep it affordable for parents. That's probably keeping me up at night more than anything else. Every time I turn around, it's like, okay, I'm going to have to raise it. I'm going to have to raise it. And I'm going to have to raise my prices. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. We're squeezing educators and parents on both ends of this issue. And so that means other than educators and parents are going to have to step into that breach, right?
Right. And we kind of do something collaborative here in Henry County. We have 3 schools that are actually part of the Henry County Child Care, or not the network, but they're part of the kindergarten, prep, and child care. And we actually put those together because of the fact that we looked at the gaps in Henry County and where they were, and we're trying to figure out what, you know, where it would be best to house those childcare programs. And so we've got programs opening in 3 different areas, but in schools. And so that was one thing that has been helpful, is our collaborative with the schools is helping us, because we don't have to pay the rent, and we don't have to pay utilities and that kind of thing. But still, I'm still struggling. It's still a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, that really goes to kind of this next reflection. It's like, what strengths or opportunities are there to build on? And, you know, like you said, you know, those public school systems, they are, you know, they have a lot set up for education, turns out. And that can include early childhood education. And, you know, that infrastructure to have that, you know, and too, as potential population changes where, okay, maybe enrollment in, you know, one school is going down, well, that there's space for then some other programs to shift as the population shifts too. Any other strengths or opportunities that folks can think of that get to some of these?
Brianna and team, I'm kind of wondering, I know you've done these kind of studies in other parts of the state. Could you talk about how East Central Indiana fares as compared to some of other those? So I don't know if that fits under our most urgent challenges or our greatest strengths. Are there trends that you've seen here that are very consistent among the state, or things that stand out one way or the other that those of us in East Central Indiana really need to focus on?
I will pop that to Alex on the data side, but I will say that the fact that there's 100 people, close to 100 people in this presentation right now is a strength of your all's community. The fact that people are gathering already to tackle this, the fact that track exists, the fact that these kind of more local coalitions like Henry County exist, it really is going to be that coalitional stuff. There's other communities where it's like, okay, nobody wants to take on the convening role, right? And it seems like here, there are several folks who are actively convening, and it's just going to take a little bit more intentional and scaling, and then getting those, and organizations with resources, aka employers and others, to come to the table so that those the coalition activities can do the things they know they need to do. Alex, do you want to talk about as terms of compare and contrast data trends?
Sure. We've done it in many areas at this point, many counties in Indiana. And I mean, the constant thread is that policy shapes all of the counties. That's kind of the reality of how this works right now. So work willing is pretty high in everything we've done. We've done down in Evansville, we've done like Lake County area, Northwest, we've done Northeast Indiana, and it's all about the same. We're estimating massive amounts of economic impact just if a handful of those individuals return to manufacturing, for instance, or wholesale trade, or some of our big ticket, more of our Indiana industry specific things. But that's my insight, really.
Yeah.
I do have a
Would you be-
question. You had talked about having one pagers for data for different counties. Can you show what something like that might look like?
Yeah, sure. Let me switch up what I'm sharing and bring one of those up here. Pick a county, any county. Actually,
Blackford, I don't know, maybe Blackford, Jay.
Okay. Let's take a look at Jay County. Let me open this fully in the app. Yes, please. It's taking a little bit of time. When I'm on Zoom, it takes a while for things to move sometimes. Okay, here we go. Adobe's popping up. Okay. Okay. So this is let me so I can and so this every one pager will have this common one side that will give you kind of the overall for the region, and kind of so you can see how counties compare and how your county compares to the overall. And then when we go, the other side will have the county specific. So this will have, the specific number, estimated work willing parents in the county, number of children, number of jobs, and then all of the economic impact number ranges that, if you'll recall, range from that downward adjusted model, mirror model, in the occupation model. And so that's where those ranges come from. So you'll be able to, you've got a page, you can say, we know, this is the dollar, the price tag on you know, the impact of, or what we're missing out on by not investing in childcare. And you know, that may be helpful, so that, you know, it's not just, oh, you know, we want to support families, which we do, but also this is workforce, it is economic development, it is the entire ability for communities to have enough to invest in anything, is part of this. So yeah.
And
There's a
as part
question.
of our follow-ups to this meeting, we'll make sure we send those one-pagers out to different counties so they can see how they compare and have that resource available to use with their local officials.
There is a question in the chat. They're what's your suggestion on approaching employers for sponsorship or sponsoring childcare, because our region has struggled trying to get those employers to help or cooperate. So what are your suggestions?
Yeah, so I think the one of the first things is that, you know, we're framing it as like, this isn't, we're not asking you to do some altruistic thing. This benefits you because you can retain skilled employees this way. You have more stability in your workforce when you can guarantee these benefits. You know, we also, in some of our other studies, we did surveys with employers and parents, and asking parents about, you know, time missed at work, professional opportunities missed, absenteeism, all of that. These things also have dollar amounts for employers, and you know, just because they're might not be tracking those doesn't mean that they aren't impacting their bottom line. I would also say, you know, you're not alone. There are plenty of employers who you know, who have set examples in this way. And you know, there are you know, you can start small, you can, you know, work with other employers to collaborate on something if you don't feel like you're big enough to support something like that. But ultimately, you know, it does benefit. If it benefits the workforce, it benefits, you know, businesses overall.
We've had another question in the chat about the full report that will eventually be on our website, and we hope sooner rather than later. But we wanted to get this out as soon as possible. We know the longer we wait, the more changes hit us, but we wanted to equip you with the data and the information and some potential solutions as quickly as we could. So we will post that on our website. And then if you registered for today, we'll also be able to send it to you that way. I think that was all of our questions in the chat. If I've missed any, somebody else please jump in. Anyone else want to come off mute and ask any final questions to the TPMA team?
There's
We just had
another question.
Do we have any data on how much money it saves employers in the long run to go in on childcare? Did we address that in any way?
Yeah, we don't, because employers have a tendency to not want to share that that kind of information and data. So you know, that kind of thing can be suppressed or just not shared. But we, you know, we can say, you know, without sharing those specifics, is that both employers and parents you know, have reported in other studies, you know, before and after impacts. So, you know, parents before they were able to have childcare, you know, this is how much they missed, how much, you know, these are the struggles they had. And employers kind of have, you know, in that survey data have estimated costs themselves. but we don't have, you know, there's no database that collects that right now. But that could also,
So
as you're
we can
thinking,
get big numbers, but it's hard to get those specifics.
yes, yeah, we can get like the general ideas of percentages and knowing that there's impact before and after. But yeah, the getting those specifics is difficult. But that, you know, maybe that becomes one of your pieces of your, you know, one of the strategies of keeping up on data is, you know, maybe that becomes one of the biggest longer term things, is to have that so you can go to employers and be like, hey, you're potentially missing out on XYZ. So
Well, and we've found, and I think a lot of people on this throughout the state would agree, that those relationships, that you don't necessarily have to go directly to the head of HR, that work on those relationships with a parent who works at that company as a starting place and build those up, because I think trust has to be there before they're going to consider giving some of those pieces of information. So that's another way to approach it too, is work on building the trust first and then build up to the heavier questions based on that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and somebody mentioned the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation has some good data. Also, the National Association for Manufacturers has, you know, we've done some case studies for them on some things, but they also worked with other firms to gather data about the impact. So there's also some numbers there.
Okay. Well, thank you to TPMA. My head hurts now because that's a lot of data, but hopefully there's some potential solutions in there as well. When we put this on our website, we will try and make it very clickable so that if there was something you were looking for in specific, whether it was talking to businesses, whether it was working on certain solutions, whether it was cooperatives, that you can find those, search those, and look at those. And then we'll use that to help guide our plans for the next year as well, as we can see what does the data tell us some of our next steps might need to be. So we appreciate all of you, TPMA. We apologize for the questions we weren't able to answer, but know that as we get that final report and get it out there, there'll be more answers that we don't have and more questions that we get. But at least we have some great data to start with and a good starting place. So we appreciate all of you for that.
Thank you so much for letting us share and working with us.
Excellent. Well, we hope you'll stay on and join us. The second half of our presentation is the part that has all of us right here, right now, in all the fields and in all the stresses as we try and figure out how do we support small businesses that are childcares and how do we support the families and the children in them. And that is on what is happening right now with CCDF, what is happening with financial changes, what up to the minute insights can we provide? And then I expect we might have some rich discussion about that as well. So I invite our own Jennifer Lee, our consultant, to take over the stage to talk to us about what she's seeing, what are some of the numbers, and what are some of her explanations that go along with that. So Jennifer, whenever you're ready.
All right, let me share my screen here. Thank you for inviting me today. I am going to share a little bit about the Child Care and Development Fund and what we're seeing. I was with Casey Child Care Resource and Referral for about 5.5 years. I've been part of TRAC for several years as well. And I'm excited to be here and I appreciate this opportunity. So just a little bit to start out with about the Child Care and Development Fund. These are federal funds that come from the Child Care and Development Block Grant. These funds come through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Administration of Children and Families. It is administered through the Family and Social Services Administration through the Office of Early Childhood and Out of School Learning. These subsidies are available to assist low-income families to pay for childcare while they work or go to school. And how this works is a family will apply. Once they are authorized, the childcare provider will be reimbursed by the state to help offset those costs. So the Office of Early Childhood and Out of School Learning, or OE-CASEL, is the lead agency for this. They monitor the rate of CCDF participation for all provider types. There are over 90% of our centers, our homes, that are CCDF eligible. Some of those responsibilities for OE-CASEL includes the administration of the voucher. This includes setting the eligibility rules, managing application wait lists, processing those vouchers, program oversight, provider support and regulation, ensuring that our child care providers are in compliance with all of the state and federal statutes, the rules, the policies for child safety, quality of care. They do set the reimbursement rates by analyzing data. They've done this by looking at market rates. They've looked at actual costs that the providers are incurring. Currently, the newest set of rates, they've broken those down into a 3-region classification based on population, density. So we have the rural counties, we have urban counties, and then we have mixed counties. The Office of Early Childhood and Out of School Learning also works to address shortages and how we can move forward, making sure that families have access to quality early care and education. So there are some other entities that received funding through the Child Care and Development Block Grant, and those included the Child Care Resource and Referral Agencies, Deloitte, which provided some IT work, Indiana Association for the Education of Young Children, and Shine Early Learning, which was Spark Learning Lab. There were a couple other agencies as well, but the agencies that I have here and a couple others had their contracts amended or terminated, or parts of it not renewed in this past fiscal year, which ended yesterday, September 30th. So what happened? The pandemic happened. During the pandemic, Indiana expanded their On My Way pre-K vouchers, their CCDF vouchers using federal aid. The CCDF reimbursement rates were also increased twice during that time with one-time COVID funds. The biggest increase occurred in 2023. But what happened is when the federal funding ended, the state didn't replace it. Instead, in December of 2024, they created a wait list for CCDF vouchers. They also reduced the number of children that could be authorized for On My Way pre-K. And since that time, no new children have been enrolled. So we had the state set aside some hold harmless funds that will ensure that the children currently authorized for the voucher will continue receiving care, but no new children would be added. One of the effects of this is that if you have a family, and let's say they have 2 toddlers, they've got the child care voucher, mom's working, but mom has a baby. This infant will not be added to their current voucher. This infant will be placed on a wait list, creating a hardship for this family, because now they're having to try to find care for an infant, but also pay for it out of pocket. And if they're qualified for CCDF, their chances are they're not going to be able to afford care for that infant. At present, there are approximately 55,000 children receiving the CCDF voucher. When this wait list was introduced in December of 2024, enrollment was at about 68,000 children. And when you compare that to the number of children authorized for the voucher prior to the pandemic, that number was 35,000. So in less than 5 years, we saw the number of children being served almost double, which is huge. Right now, there are over 25,000 children on the wait list for the voucher. Most recently, this past September, the reimbursement rates for our child care providers were adjusted to address a $225 million funding gap. The majority of our Indiana's providers, they rely heavily on this funding, and they have experienced now a reduction in that reimbursement and are struggling to make up that difference. The funding gap reflects the expiration of temporary COVID relief funds, which again expanded capacity, supported providers, but it was not designed as a long-term solution. And I think that that's key there. Overall, the CCDF funding that we're looking at right now, it is representative of an ongoing financial challenge. This is not a short-term issue. This is something that we are going to be dealing with probably for several years. If you have not watched the quarterly financial report that FSSA did, I would highly recommend it. It really breaks down where our funding comes from, where it's been spent. It explains how we've gotten into the position that we're in. It's available on YouTube. There is a link there, and I will put a link in the chat to it as well. The next quarterly financial report meeting is right now scheduled for October 29th. There is a little asterisk that says the date may be changed, but it will be live streamed. So again, I would encourage you to take some time to watch this and learn more about where this funding is going and where it's how it's being used. So the effects of this are huge, and I think it's hard to narrow down the big picture of the impact of it. But programs relying on the CCDF subsidy may have to close classrooms. They may close their program. I know that Carol mentioned in the chat that 45 programs closed in the month of September. We're going to continue seeing that. To balance their budget, providers have stopped hiring. They're cutting hours. They're laying off staff. They're reducing their spending. The lower voucher rates, it directly reduces the income paid to our providers, which makes it difficult for our providers to maintain fiscal stability and to continue providing the high quality care that they are providing. It is making paying staff, paying for utilities, buying their supplies very difficult. Some of our providers are increasing their rates to make up that difference. They're asking parents to pay that overage, which parents are, if they're receiving that CCDF voucher, it's going to be difficult for them to afford that overage. But I want to share just real quick a little story that I've heard twice from a couple different providers, is that the parents, they were watching the news. They were aware of these changes that were going on with CCDF. They didn't think it was going to affect them. They thought the providers were just going to pick up the slack, that they were going to find a way, that they wouldn't have to pay overages or pay their copays. And so some of our families are really shocked that this is being passed down to them. Something else that providers are dealing with right now is that with the loss of the child care resource and referral agencies, the loss of Spark Learning Lab, the loss of the workforce and the On My Way pre-K project managers through INAEYC, these providers have lost critical support at a time when they need it most. And so where do they go for support now? They have to go to each other. These changes that we are seeing, it's creating friction between not only the families and the providers, but also between providers, because now we have vacancies, we have providers struggling to get those filled, they're struggling to stay in business. And this is a time where we really need to be working together and not against one another. I do want to briefly share some information. Early Learning Indiana did a study. It was Current Challenges in Childcare, Your Voice Matters. They did this study back in August 2025. They surveyed 443 providers across 67 counties, Indiana counties. The majority of these programs were level 3 or 4 in paths to quality. And a couple of the things that they had reported was that 19% had closed at least one classroom already this year. That's 364 total classrooms closed. 16% of them stated that they expect to close a classroom or close their program within the next 12 months. That's huge. That's a huge loss. The projected statewide loss is 10,000 seats. So this takes me to the 2,200 willing to work families who can't work because they don't have childcare, and we're losing more seats. That number will increase if there aren't the seats available. Another thing that was pointed out in this survey that they did is that we are in a staffing crisis. There were 396 full-time staffing vacancies. And half of the providers said they're trying to hire, but they're facing some challenges. And they acknowledge that these staffing shortages limited classroom capacity. And this goes back to, the pay, the rate of pay that our providers are able to offer, the benefits. There's so much involved. And so because of time, I didn't go into much detail, but there is a link. And again, I will post that link in the chat. Please go and take a read. It's a quick, easy read. But it's full of really, really great information. So families and children. A wait list means that more families are unable to find childcare. If they can't afford it, they're not working. The providers, feel that impact. But when families face high levels of stress, whether they're having to choose between working and paying for childcare, or putting food on their table, paying for childcare, or paying their utilities, that stress that parents carry can be transferred onto their children. And that could cause a higher rate of child abuse or neglect within our communities. But in addition to that, families will be looking for affordable care, and they may choose to send their child to an unlicensed provider, maybe the neighbor down the street, or Uncle Dan, whoever it is. But these people will be maybe untrained. They may not offer a safe or supportive environment for our children, which again could increase the numbers that we'll see with child abuse and neglect. Reduced availability and quality of programs interrupts the early learning and social emotional development of our children. When children miss out on critical learning time, it can affect their future learning. Studies have shown that quality care, creates an environment for children to be ready for kindergarten. Without that, we're going to see higher remediation costs throughout school. Studies have also shown that when children experience quality care and learning, they're better prepared for the workforce when they become adults. They're healthier, they're least likely to be incarcerated. It also shows that for families, when the subsidy is not available, we will see a higher number of work disruptions. When childcare and subsidies are unavailable or unreliable, parents or caregivers are more likely to reduce their work hours, to take time off, or leave the workforce entirely, which leads to significant losses in wages and economic input. Parents miss an average of 14 days of work related to childcare disruptions a year. 14 days. That's a lot. And a lot of families can't afford to miss that many days. But when they're missing those days, the crisis of the lack of childcare, it will contribute to productivity losses for businesses, lower tax revenues, which affects the broader economy. When parents can't secure affordable care, employer absenteeism and turnover rise, which costs the employer. Parents, especially moms, will leave the workforce. And right now we are seeing a high number of women leaving the workforce to stay home to take care of their children because of the lack of childcare. The economic ripple effect will impact local businesses and regional growth. Childcare is a small business. It is the backbone to our communities. Without it, employers struggle to fill those spots, which one could affect their ability to expand or even to stay in our areas. It could affect new businesses coming to our area. Small businesses, if families aren't working, they're not spending money. They're not visiting the local coffee shop to spend their money. They're not taking their children to the skating rink. So that we'll see a loss economically that way as well. The other thing is with low-income families and rural communities, they're likely to be hit the hardest, which will exacerbate the disparities to access to early education and workforce participation. Why does this matter? Affordable and high-quality childcare, it's essential. I said it a few minutes ago, childcare is the backbone to our communities. If we have childcare in our communities, our families will be able to utilize it. Our children don't miss out on critical learning time. Parents are able to work. Businesses are able to grow. Investing in childcare is investing in Indiana's future workforce and prosperity. We could make that even smaller, though. Investing in childcare is investing in Delaware County or Randolph County or Jay County's future workforce and prosperity. These little ones that we're working with and we're teaching, we're building those foundations, creating those pathways for them. They are tomorrow's workforce. And so the lack of childcare doesn't just affect today, it affects our tomorrows. So one of the things I would say is contact your legislators, contact your county coalitions, support those long-term solutions that build sustainable early learning systems. If there's one thing that we have learned is that we can no longer use Band-Aids to solve the problem. The problems that we're experiencing today with the CCDF wait list and the reduction in reimbursement rates, these problems began 2 and 3 years ago. And so we have to not only solve the problem for today, but also for tomorrow. We have to come up with a sustainable solution. And it could be, it will look different for every community. But I would say partner with your local early learning coalitions. They're leading this work. You know, they're while our child care providers are taking care of our children, our coalitions are working to take care of our providers. So find a way to support them. So partner with your providers to help them stabilize care in their communities. This could be connecting them with an employer, connecting them with a grant opportunity, volunteering your time, donating supplies, helping them refresh a classroom. You know, engaging businesses, that's a difficult one. It's one I've been working on for 5 years, trying to engage employers. You know, we got flex time, we have dependent care assistance plans, you know, asking them to sponsor a child, you know, finding a way for them to maybe pay for those child care seats for the first 2 to 3 weeks of a new employee. You know, there are things that we could do, but it does require a partnership with employers, which, you know, their budgets look a lot like ours right now. They're struggling for staff as well. So I love the idea of try-share plans. I would love to see something like that happen in this area. But again, funding is key. It's everything, every problem that we have right now, funding is the source of it. So here are some of my references that I utilized for today. There's my contact information. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, give me a phone call. I would be happy to answer any of the questions that you have. And thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We appreciate how up to date that is, and it really hits the big picture that hits home for a lot of us. We'll go ahead and open it up. What questions do you have for Jennifer that came up or that you want to know more about? As I look back through the chat, I do see that people are wondering if they can have access to your presentation. Will you be able to share that
Yes.
after this, Jennifer?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I will send it to you and you can send it out to the attendees.
Perfect. Perfect. And will you make sure to go ahead and put in the chat some of those links? We'll not talk to you for a second so you can put those in the chat before we run out of time there. I know people don't want to miss out on those.
Yep.
Looks like some other people have put some great links in the chat as well. So while you're still on here, you might scroll back through those. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and their Untapped Potential Report, which I know we cited a couple of times, but it's great to have that tab open. So you might want to grab that. Jennifer added her new tabs there. So yeah, so I'll open it up to the group. Is there anything that we haven't touched on today that you would like track to focus on? Anything that you'd like more information on? Anything that you have some expertise on and want to share to the group that you've learned as we're all trying to keep up with the new information coming out daily? We encourage any of you to share any of those thoughts at this point. Okay, I'm seeing some other things come up in the chat. Appreciation to everyone for today who presented, and appreciation to everyone who gave their time up in their busy day to make sure that they could stay informed. And hopefully you got some action steps from this as well. We want to thank our presenters again, for all of our friends at TPMA and Jennifer, and remind you all that we will send you everything we can as soon as we can. So be on the lookout for those. And again, we encourage you to keep an eye on the TRAC website. That's ecitrac.org. And that will include as many up-to-date things as we can, as well as some current resources for providers and coalitions in East Central Indiana and beyond. So hearing nothing else, I will say thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for your support of the early learning ecosystem and for continuing to do this hard work. We're all in it together, and everyone have a great day. Great seeing everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey, Jerry, do we need to stay on for a little bit? Do we stay on?
I just saw that you put in there about the summit.
Yeah,
Why
I
didn't you
did.
announce that to everybody on there? Sorry, I didn't think to do that, but I'm glad you got it in the chat at least.
We can include it in the
So-
follow-up. We can include information on that summit in the follow-up to today's meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
Do
good
we
idea.
need to stay on a little bit, or are we done?
If you need anything, feel free to. Otherwise, you are good to go.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for what you shared today. Appreciate it. Okay. Do we know how to save everything so that the chat gets saved and we have everything we need? You're muted.
It will start saving onto my computer.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, ladies.
Okay. Great work, team.
Yes, thank you.